Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Oh, okay. And I was saying that this is our fifth event this year in this research cluster under this theme. We want to work on, we want to study, and we want to do research. That is the era of chip era and digital governance. We all know that this global chip war that sparked in recent years, it seems to have marked a pivotal transformation in the 21st century concerning its geopolitics. And it reveals not only the strategic centrality of semiconductor, but the restructuring of global power itself. The chip now form the backbone of AI, 5G, surveillance regime, automatic warfare, and rendering control over their production and supply chain a geopolitical imperative. U.S. has already imposed sweeping export ban to certain China's rise, targeting to contain its rise, targeting especially on firms like Huawei and restricting access to advanced chip technology. And China, in turn, accelerates its techno sovereignty through state-backed Belt and Road Initiative, especially its digital Silk Road, and laying the groundwork for a new digital sphere of influence across Eurasia and Africa. Taiwan's semiconductor company, also leading figure in global semiconductor fabrication, sits very precariously at this intersection of great power rivalry, supplying chain tech giants like Apple and Nvidia, while expanding globally under rising geopolitical pressure. India, backed by the Semicon-India program, is positioning itself as a strategic alternative in the global chip ecosystem, aligning with Western interests to reconfigure supply chain and diminish Chinese dominance. So we are facing these questions. How do these technological disciplines discipline population and suppress dissent? How are rare earth resources and digital platforms weaponized and influence our daily life? And how is global diplomacy being redrawn through silicon and code? So we are very happy and honored to have our speaker today, Professor Kanda Pali, to talk about this issue. So Professor Kanda Pali is a professor of China Studies at the University of New Delhi, India. He is an expert on China's foreign and security policies. And he has been, he is now currently the dean in the School of International Studies, Nehru University in New Delhi. And he has been awarded with many awards, and he has published especially very important works on Chinese military arms Southern Asia. In PLA shapes the future security environment, Rise of China and Territorial Disputes, in a book, The Rise of China, Beijing's Strategies and Implications for the Asia Pacific. and China and the transnational maritime security challenges in maritime security in the Indo-Pacific China, and so on. So there actually is a very rich and very productive career publishing numerous tags, and I also learned that it's being circulated very widely among readers and also his students. So I also welcome our discussion, both from Calcutta and also from Taiwan, and also our audience here online. So we will introduce our discussion later, but I want to give the floor to Professor and to give your speech now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Liu. My discussants, Professor Reshaping Liu and the Kolkata chapter. It is indeed a pleasure and an honor to be with the Yangming Xiaodong Dashue. I think it augurs well for the India-Taiwan relations in terms of sitting close to the TSMC office in Hsinchu. And I'm really excited to be with you this afternoon to discuss the chip diplomacy and the implications for Taiwan-India relations amidst this growing techno-geopolitical changes that are happening across the globe. Thank you very much for this opportunity to be with you this afternoon. And let me greet all the participants. A very good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. So let's go to the basics and discuss the issues related to chip diplomacy. Now, in terms of foreign policy domain, a number of issues have now come forward to exert influence on the foreign policy. We have seen how climate change issues have come about in influencing the foreign policy. Paris meeting in 2015 provided for that emissions-related cap, 15%, and some kind of funding on those. We have also seen biological issues coming to the fore in terms of foreign policy, energy, other non-traditional security issues, and increasingly as well, the semiconductor industry has now become a major aspect of diplomacy. So, unlike the traditional foreign policy, which is between state-to-state negotiations in protecting the national interests, today, as part of the globalization, we have seen a number of new developments impinging on the foreign policy and going beyond the state-to-state relations. And in fact, you have also state to MNCs, multinational corporations. So traditional diplomacy has to readjust to these new demands, changes that have happened due to the globalization process. So in this context, the chip diplomacy is also part of that revoking of the traditional diplomacy, where you have state-to-state interactions now expanded to include non-state. If you call the multinational corporations as non-state, you have also the role that these play. And it is only of recent origin when the multinational corporations have increased their hold over the global situation. For example, there are previously, prior to the globalization, after the Soviet disintegration, we have seen only few multinational corporations emerging, but after 90s substantial growth in these to hundreds of thousands of these companies going abroad, and this has exerted a lot of influence on foreign policy. So let's, at a functional level, let us define chip diplomacy as the usage by the foreign ministries of negotiations, deals, and training, production, and circulation of all these on a global scale, which we call roughly as chip diplomacy. For example, Taiwan had negotiated extensively with several countries in Europe, in US, now with India, and has formulated certain rules of conduct on the chip diplomacy. So this, at a functional level, let us call this as a strategic use of semiconductor technology, production, and supply chains for influence and negotiations. So with that basic definition, let us go into some of the dynamics. So we have seen that chips have become a part of power, which is an element in international relations. We redefined the national interests in terms of acquiring comprehensive national power. Zhonghekoli is a very complex subject. Initially started with the Soviet Union in the 1960s, and then the Andy Marshall's office in Pentagon adopted the comprehensive national power. And gradually, every other nation is today using the comprehensive national power index in order to enhance their power. So traditionally, it used to include the GDP and military power, but after the Soviet disintegration, it started including soft power and manufacturing power and a whole lot of issues. So semiconductor production is one then has become part of the CNP, Comprehensive National Power. Today, most nations are introducing these elements of power in their foreign policy, especially those which are growing extensively in the international system. So CNP studies include those semiconductor production, circulation on a global scale. In this context, the global power dynamics is also influenced by the semiconductors. Here, there is the element of leadership that many nations want to acquire. Also, there is the element of influence on economic security, because these semiconductors are very, in a market value terms, very valuable in per capita production. For example, I would suggest the audience to read a Chinese economist in Chicago University. She suggests the title of that is When We Are Looking for the Stars Above. And she suggests that the Silicon Valley is considered to be the highest in terms of per capita production. Compared to the high-tech industries, the financial sector, the low-tech manufacturing, the agricultural producers, or even hunter-gatherers. So in this hierarchy, it is suggested that semiconductor industry produces the highest value per capita. And human evolution has seen this as the highest. And hence, we need to consider the economic security as well. Increasingly, semiconductors are used in the national defense as Professor Liu mentioned in the beginning, there is the AI, which has influenced extensively, and the computational power of these chips leading to helping in complex decision-making processes in national defense decision-making. So national defense also became a part of that chip diplomacy in order to enhance the nation's power. So we need to also consider then the national defense requirements, in which increasingly the chips are being used, and so this has become a part of power, which is generally considered to be part of the international relations. So control over the semiconductor technology, industry, production cycle, the supply chains, these have become sources of economic and military power in the 21st century. And that's the basis for our discussion here in terms of chip diplomacy. How nations have negotiated, how nations have used semiconductors as a power indicator in their comprehensive national power. So those are the things that we will have a discussion on. So with that brief introduction, let me go into the next slide, please. So how does a state promote such interactions with the semiconductor industry within one's own nation, as well as in terms of circulation with the rest of the world? Number one is in terms of investments that are carried on. Many nations today are investing heavily in the chip making industries. So this is one. And for investments, you need state-to-state guarantees on investment protection, double taxation. These cannot be done at the individual level or at the MNC's level. It has to be done in the traditional state-to-state relations. So investments constitutes then an element of power in the hands of the state. Joint ventures, again, this can be done between two companies. However, there need to be guarantees by the state in terms of land acquisition, which is generally also part of the state, or incentives like tax breaks or others, which traditionally states have done before. So again, even in terms of the joint venture companies, there is a requirement for the state to intervene. And then increasingly, because of the geopolitics, there is the nearshoring or friendshoring. That means that the investments that were made before in a country, which is now increasingly becoming hostile. Professor Liu mentioned the case of China. And here the friendshoring, for example, the Trump administration has been looking at nearshoring and friendshoring of the semiconductor industry, as well as with other industries as well. So increasingly, the state becomes very active in such programmings involving not just the semiconductor industry, but also other industries. For example, solar panels, wind energy, where we have increasing pressure from the climate change related matters. At a secondary level, there are subsidy packages announced by the states on the semiconductor industry, technology partnerships, because there is an overarching guarantees that are provided by the state. The technology partnerships are also essential for guaranteeing the profits, progress, and expansion of the industry. Then there are strategic agreements to ensure that there is a stable supply of chips, and in terms of crises, that the industry is not drastically affected. So state presence here is quite extensive. The guarantees are necessary for the growth of the industry, semiconductor industry, and hence these could be taken as part of the nitty-gritty aspects of the chip diplomacy. Thirdly, states are involved in terms of trade agreements. While these are guaranteed under the WTO, there is also the option for the states to walk away from WTO or not really join many of these agreements. And hence the state here is playing a bigger role, even though WTO can be considered to be a supranational body which regulates the trade-related matters. Yet we also have the state intervention on the trade agreements. For example, Taiwan, India are founding members of the GATT, General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs, way back in 1940s. And China only became WTO member in 2001 after 15, 16 years of negotiations. But the China government, the PRC government, has to guarantee a lot of things. Of course, they have not kept that word, yet the state has to guarantee a lot of things as a part of the entry into the WTO. And here the state providing such guarantees is important for us in looking at the semiconductor industry's progression. Tariffs, duties, which have now become more animated with the Trump administration coming in. These are issues that the states traditionally did not deal with, but increasingly with globalization, we have seen such influences. Then there are stringent provisions for safeguarding trade secrets, because these are high-tech and the state needs to provide guarantees on no spillover effects, no negative influences in regard to the chip industry, design, and the IPR protection. So there are requirements that the state has to provide for when they enter into negotiations. So IPR issues are very important in the light of what we have been seeing, the European Union, United States insisting on those IPRs. So here the state comes back in providing those guarantees. And these are taken, if there is any violation, these are taken to the international legal procedures on the violation of the IPRs. Again, state is involved in terms of export controls and restrictions sometimes. We have seen, for example, the Trump administration imposing several tariffs, restrictions on the import of certain goods and services. So there the state is involved, especially in terms of what we saw as the CHIPS Act by the United States. There are restrictions placed on countries which are of concern to United States or other countries. Finally, the state is involved in terms of joint R&D procedures, research and development. Again, there are certain guarantees that the state need to provide for the other party, and also in terms of standardization procedures, the quality control, the various others that need to be provided for. So that's the basis for our discussion in the chip diplomacy. So here the state role is very, very significant, even though it is losing ground in the globalization period, because now you have a kind of cartels, big companies like TSMC or Micron or Samsung or Sony. These have become big conglomerates, as the Koreans call chaebols, big multinational corporations which go beyond the state power and influence the procedures, etc. Since most of us gathered here are academics, let me briefly touch upon the literature review, which is a template for our discussion later on. Traditionally, international relations theory is divided into three main aspects. You have realism or neorealism, its variants, which suggests that there is a certain conflict that is emerging because of this control over technologies, high technologies, semiconductor industry. So there is the idea that technology could become, high technology could become a source of concern, a source of anarchy, a source of combining with the other countries in terms of a bandwagoning or increasing one's own power, self-help measures. So realism, neorealism has certain tenets here, which are also extensively used in terms of the semiconductor industry. For example, if country A, state A considers country B as a challenge, a threat for various reasons, in the international system, there are export controls which are imposed, like what we saw in the last few months, or even before, the United States imposing restrictions on the semiconductor sales to Iran, to North Korea, to countries of concern. And so this could be an explanation. And Chris Miller, in his famous book, mentions about those denial strategies on export controls, sanctions, heavy diplomatic pressure, coercive diplomatic pressures. This could be broadly termed as a neo-realist explanation. On the other hand, globalization brought in interdependence, economic interdependence between A, B, C. Joseph Nye, who recently passed away, Robert Keohane and others extensively dealt with that economic interdependence theories, which suggest that the countries involved in economic cooperation tend to reduce the conflict, and with communication between the domestic actors, try to reduce the elements of conflict between A and B in the international system. So economic interdependence leading to lessening of conflicts. So this has become very popular since the 1990s, when a series of institutions, multilateral institutions, were set up, and these have reduced conflict to an extent, but were not able to explain fully the interaction between states on the technological and other interactions. For instance, China banned rare earth metals to Japan in the 2000s, 2003. Even though there is so much of economic interdependence between China and Japan, nevertheless, the Chinese took the recourse to banning rare earth metals. Now, recently, in the last 1 year or so, since the Biden administration, spilling over into the Trump administration, we have seen China banning germanium, gallium, and other rare earth metals to the United States. These are useful extensively for the high-tech industry, yet there is a ban on these rare earth metals by China, which is also part of the interdependence, yet it introduces the restrictions on countries because of ABCD reasons. So you have also a phenomena where the economic interdependence really has limitations because of these state intervention and ban on those high-tech, the elements used in the high-tech industry. So this is one which has limitations. For example, the World Bank, the IMF, the United Nations-led institutions, the AIIB, Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, or ADB, Asian Development Bank, for over a long period of time insisted on economic interdependence, suggesting that the element of conflict should be reduced and interdependence should be increased for the good of all countries involved and markets involved. But that has limitation with this rare earth metal ban, So economic interdependence, again, is fully not able to comprehend such phenomena. Of course, in Keohane and Joseph Nye thesis, we also have an asymmetric interdependence. A and B not necessarily symmetrically dependent on each other. So there is a certain asymmetric interdependence. So that partly explains to the emergence of differences between A and B in the international system. A third one is in terms of the constructivist impact on the international relations. This is a relatively new IR theory. Alexander Wendt, Joseph Lapid, and others have promoted. This is yet to make much impact on the semiconductor industry. So essentially, we can say the interdependence theory and neorealism, had a much stronger influence on the semiconductor industry in its explanation in international relations theory. One of the other influences is techno-nationalism. Ivan Feigenbaum, in his book, and Alex Capri, they have looked at the techno-nationalism that control over these technologies would result in restrictions placed. But this is based on patriotism, nationalism, and other factors which are a domestic variant, domestic factors. So we can broadly then summarize that in the literature review, we see a dominance of one, cooperation, as Lee Kai-Fu had suggested to for our last 2 decades. We have seen semiconductor industry cooperation as an S&T project, science and technology project, as a liberal value system. That has been the major influential. We have also seen the technology denials and others as a contrast to the cooperation, the partnerships that were agreed to before. So interdependence and realism could be the major explanations for the semiconductor industry in terms of foreign policy, in terms of IR theory. In our subtitle, we have the techno-geopolitical order change as a factor in Taiwan-India interactions in the semiconductor industry. In the past, say, 1.5 decades, we saw that there are the global financial crisis of 2007-8. We have also the energy prices skyrocketing to $145 per barrel. Now it's about $60-70 per barrel. So the energy issues have also come to the fore as a part of the globalization. But we have seen, due to the pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, there are a lot of disruptions. War has also brought in disruptions for this phenomena of supply chain mechanisms. So this has disrupted the way that we were dealing with before the economic crisis, the financial crisis, as well as the conflict between A and B have resulted in some kind of disruption at the supply chain. Specifically, COVID-19 pandemic resulted in substantial disruption. We were all at home. We were all doing the virtual meetings. There is the supply chain disruption. Even though the supply chains have been recovered to an extent, there is no guarantee that this will not be repeated in future. So in the light of this, Australia, Japan, India have signed the Supply Chain Resilience Initiative Act, where they try to prepare for contingencies in future where you have a supply chain disruptions. and hence the concern over the supply chains, increasingly in the international domain. The second one is in terms of the techno-nationalism, as we discussed before. United States introduced the CHIPS Act with concerns that China is using some of these semiconductor parts for the upgradation of its military technological prowess. Not just in weather forecasting, not just in other socio-economic related, but in the military domain. Specifically, China launched in 2015 Made in China 2025 campaign as part of the 13th Five-Year Plan and current 14th Five-Year Plan. In this, there are 11 areas where China wants to be the superpower. One of that is in digitalization, which requires a lot of the semiconductor industry. China wants to be number one in semiconductor. There is nothing wrong in terms of ambitions that any country can have such projections for future. Yet there is the concern that China is using extensively some of these in the military domain. And in the recent conflicts, we did see the role of China in one way or the other. For example, the Biden administration had asked President Xi Jinping not to provide for material support in the Ukrainian conflict. There is a specific mention in Bali when they met in the G20 meeting. Likewise, the concerns related to the Gaza conflict or others, where there is the use of high-tech equipment and their role in the human lives and other phenomena. So Made in China 2025 was targeted by the US administration in terms of those restrictions. And here again, the concept of self-sufficiency in semiconductor technology and manufacturing, and also the dual circulation strategy as China has initiated during the 14th Five-Year Plan. So China wants to acquire something like 80% of all its products from the domestic production. It wants to lessen the dependence on the rest of the world in the semiconductor industry and wants to procure 80% of its products from the domestic market. So it's some kind of import substitution policies in economic related matters, and indicating to the reversal of globalization by China and lessening of dependence on globalization in this regard. So this has become a major concern, and then we saw the semiconductor ban by the Biden administration, suggesting to concerns on how these are used, or as the Ren Chengfei Meng Wanzhou case indicated, to the geopolitical element of the semiconductor industry. Because specifically, there was the allegation that Meng Wanzhou was involved in Iranian as well as North Korean supplies. And so the geopolitical element here is very clear. This resulted in partly to the Trump administration tariffs. We have seen last 3 months or so, there is an extensive campaign on the tariffs, and a number of restrictions were placed in terms of the most industries, including in the semiconductor industry. So one of the aspects is the tariffs resulted in some kind of disruptions in the entire global semiconductor industry, not just in semiconductor, of course, in most of the industries. But everybody was given a 90-day reprieve, including China on May 11th at Geneva meeting. So the tariffs issue is one of the dampeners for entire global trade, including for the semiconductor industry. The role of China has been one of the major factors in the changing techno-geopolitical order because of its revisionist streaks in the global order. So there are concerns expressed on the direction that China is taking in many areas, including in the semiconductor industry. So there is the Chinese who have roughly about 8% of the global chip production, and both in hardware and software, they are making advances. So concerns are in regard to the revisionism that China has in the global order. The second concern is in terms of the pandemic, and so the necessity for resilience as expressed by the other countries. One of the other things in terms of the techno-geopolitical order is general shortage of skilled workers across the globe. As the value chain kept on increasing, we saw from 28 nanometers to that of TSMC is now going to 1.1 nanometer. Japan has been last year has been making efforts to construct a chip which is of 2 nanometer length, and TSMC further upgrading this. So when you have the value chain going up, there are also the shortages of skilled labor workers in this regard in semiconductor industry. Specifically, you have also redundancy. You have also the legacy chips, which are kind of introduced to other countries while you go up the value chains. So here the India-Taiwan relations become important, both as a shift in terms of the industry. For example, in India, most of the semiconductor fabs that were established are part of the legacy, that is 28 nanometer length, and so on and so forth. They have not reduced the chip intensity yet, because India just started off with this semiconductor fab construction. So one of the things that is also affecting the techno-geopolitical order is the shortage or the requirement for training to upgrade into the higher level capability. A fourth factor is there are specific enclaves, technological enclaves that were established because of the higher R&D in various sectors, manufacturing, technology transfer, and cooperation. We did see that there is a certain supply chain disruption, geopolitical shocks, geo-economic shocks, the financial crisis, etc., that would introduce new behavioral patterns from the state. So we saw the European Union introducing digital partnerships in the Indo-Pacific. They have major tie-ups with Japan, South Korea, Singapore. Even though Singapore is a city-state, it is advanced in terms of the semiconductor industry, the fabrications that have been developed. So EU made digital partnerships. You may have also come across the ban imposed in terms of the lithograph machines from US, Japan, and Netherlands. About 1.5 years ago, there has been some restrictions because of the kind of inroads that China made in this. There is also the ISET, the US-India Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technologies. One as part of the Quad and other at a bilateral level, exploring critical technologies. Some scholarships were announced as a part of the this initiative in Quad meeting, Quadrilateral Security Dialogue process. And at the bilateral level as well, the ISET program is extensively being implemented. So let us look at the broader semiconductor industry at the global regional levels. The major global players are United States, which is said to be having about 12% shares in terms of the semiconductor manufacturing and revenues. Taiwan between 50 to 60%. TSMC itself has a major portion of that. South Korea, which also has some major semiconductor industries, about 13%. China is growing substantially now, but at the moment about 8%. Japan 4%, and European Union is said to have roughly about 8% of the global production or the revenues. So it is estimated that the global production of the semiconductor manufacturing output would be about 404 million wafers, each wafer having hundreds of thousands of chips combined together. And the market value for this year is expected to be around $690 billion, roughly about $700 billion, which indicates that the growth rates is relatively high despite the technological disruptions. We saw the technological disruptions, yet we see there is a growth rate substantially in this sector. Most important, the advanced node capacity is much more higher than the average semiconductor chip production. So that indicates to an encouraging trend in terms of the global industry. There is also very strong demand in sectors like data centers, AI. As Professor Liu mentioned, there is the AI, which is increasingly used for both civilian as well as strategic prediction capabilities. Increasingly, AI is defining our interactions. We should not forget that China released the DeepSeek on the day Trump was inaugurated in January this year. So there is the power element, which is quite symbolic with that introduction of the DeepSeek. So it's important; those signals are very important. We also see a lot of high-performance computing, both in traditional as well as in the futuristic quantum computing areas. We see that tendency. Taiwan specifically is the world's top semiconductor manufacturer, with TSMC at the forefront, exporting nearly 150 billion worth of chips some 3 years ago. This trend is expected to be continued as the investments in this sector are increasing. We saw a $165 billion investment by TSMC in Arizona and other areas, which is basically signaling then on the expansion or internationalization of the semiconductor industry. The signals are quite stark. And investment in Japan for the upgradation of those chips to the 2 nanometer length is also another indicator of that internationalization of the semiconductor industry. So what I was trying to argue is that the semiconductor industry is robust, expanding, and it has a strong international relations impact in recent times. Next slide, please. So let us move into Taiwan and India. Here, I would like to first brief the bilateral relations. In 1995, reciprocal offices were established, the TECC and ITA. And since then, we had double taxation avoidance. We have also the investment protection agreements, commercial agreements. So much so today there are about 250 Taiwanese companies working in India. We have also limited Indian investment in Taiwan, estimated to be around $75 billion, while the Taiwanese investment is picking up around $6-7 billion, $8 billion being the trade. But prospective investment is coming up in terms of the semiconductor, but also in the other consumer industries. Most important is the complementarities between India and Taiwan. We see that there is a growing urge in India to establish these semiconductor industries, while Taiwan is moving up in the value chain. So we have an opportunity for India to learn from that process. So what are the advantages and for both these countries? What are the advantages for Taiwan in terms of investing in the semiconductor industry in India? One is the cost advantage. The labor value in Taiwan has gone up substantially. And so there is the cost advantage that India now acquires. In addition to the incentives provided by the Indian government, we have a PLI scheme, production-linked incentive PLI scheme, which provides for incentives for those who establish industry in India. So with this, we are trying to attract the semiconductor industry, not just in semiconductor, but also in mobile phone, in other telecommunication equipment and other areas. This is quite successful so far in terms of attracting a lot of investment and setting up the manufacturing sectors across India. You may have seen the recent information about the Apple company moving away from Changzhou in Henan to Mangalore, Pune, and other areas. So there is a signaling on the iPhone 16s being manufactured in India. So PLI scheme has its impact, even though it has some problems like reimbursements and various other nitty-gritty issues. Yet there is a signaling from the Indian government related to the shift towards India, incentives for those who want to shift towards India. India is growing this year at around 6.2, 6.3%, and it has jumped up from the in the ease of doing business category. It has also attracted a lot of FDI, foreign direct investment, in the last few years. And this suggests that there is a growing interest in India from across the world as well as in Taiwan. So the cost advantage and the incentives were really attractive destinations. The second is that India has a qualified workforce, especially in STEM education, science and technology, engineering, and mathematics. India has the third largest engineering graduates. While there is some criticism about the quality in the private engineering colleges and others. Yet, in terms of reskilling them, a provision for reskilling them would be substantially beneficial for countries which are establishing big industries. So there is a huge pool. After the United States and Russia, India has the largest scientific, let's say, human power, not manpower. So that indicates there is the basic ground level preparation that has been done over a period of time. So it is estimated that India has about 20% of the world's semiconductor design workforce that is available for rewriting those rules of the game. And this offers the Taiwanese companies access to a huge pool of skilled engineers. Of course, they need to be reskilled in specific sectors. That is why you have in Hsinchu, in various other places, the reskilling or retraining programs are being conducted. There is also 100,000 workforce that has been agreed to between the two sides. This is also one area where we could see some progress in the future. The third aspect is the collaboration with India can drive innovation, reduce costs for Taiwan, and improve the time to market for new products, making Taiwanese companies more competitive globally as it moves above the supply chains, value chains. So this is one advantage that Taiwan can derive from. There is also the diversification of labor-intensive operations and moving up the value chain here. The collaboration between Taiwan and India would also allow the Taiwanese firms to leverage India's strength in chip design, assembly, testing, complementing the Taiwanese existing manufacturing expertise. Both also can reduce their reliance on China. They are heavily dependent on China in the recent times. So this would diversify the supply chains converging on China, which has created some problems during the COVID pandemic, but also on the geopolitical issues. As the tensions rise in Taiwan Straits and on India-China border areas, this provides for an opportunity for both of Taiwan and India to reduce reliance on China. Finally, there is also the other advantage of scale. India has 400 million consumers. There is the progression here in terms of talent and growing domestic electronic market in India, which is a major asset for Taiwan if it is able to really explore this. So that is a major advantage. India is also transparent in terms of its strategic objectives, and hence there is the matchup between Taiwan and India in this regard. What are the advantages for India in looking at the collaboration with Taiwan on the semiconductor industry? It has a huge market, and the semiconductor industry alone is expected to grow to $55 billion by the next year, according to various surveys. We also are trying to boost the domestic electronics production, which is expected to rise to about 300 billion by the next 5 years. So that's a huge capability and demand, which can be utilized extensively in this regard. India is setting up several domestic fabs. It is attracting the Taiwanese industry. As I will show in the next few slides, there is the Indian effort to restart the construction activity after the pandemic related. So India made several initiatives like Make in India, Skill India, Digital India, Sagarmala, and other initiatives, which require a lot of chip consumption, semiconductor industries, because these demand much more semiconductors. So there is a huge demand there, and Taiwan is providing for a learning curve in this time because of their training, skilling, and other activities. So this is very useful for India in graduating to a higher technological capability with the Taiwanese cooperation. It is expected to grow in terms of the high value jobs, stimulate the broader ecosystem in India. So far, we didn't have that. So this is a very big advantage that India is expecting from Taiwan. The ecosystem, which is very necessary to drive R&D and innovation. So this is one major aspect that India is looking at. India has several strengths in software. You heard about the BPOs, KPOs previously, and also in terms of these the software packages. And India is making the Minister Vaishnav made an announcement that in about 9 months' time, we would have an AI initiative, demonstrative, AI machines for the kind of calculations, mathematical calculations, etc. So there is heavy pressure on the scientific community to come across these AI machines. You may have also heard about the quantum computing in Bangalore and in other places where there has been an experiment in this regard. So India is preparing the ground, a fertile ground for the Taiwanese semiconductor industry to flourish. So here the both hands are matching, clapping to an extent, and that is the important signal in the Taiwan and India interactions. Next slide, please. So India has, as I was mentioning, there is not just the PLI scheme, but there are specific semiconductor industry related incentives provided. For instance, India is suggesting that the government will offer 50% of project costs for approved semiconductor projects. And $10 billion is what is provided for as an initial investment ceiling. And $15.2 billion of initiative to establish India as a global chip manufacturing hub has been made. And they are also locating these fabs on the DMIC, Delhi Mumbai Industrial Corridor, where Japan is investing about $120 billion. They want to convert this into Osaka to Tokyo kind of infrastructure. Dedicated freight corridors for the free movement, swift movement of goods and services, and also the high-speed railway. The Ahmedabad to Mumbai high-speed railway, with over $10 billion investment, is part of that infrastructure projects. And coincidentally, you see most of these fabs are coming in Gujarat, Maharashtra, which are technologically more advanced, and facilities are provided for the transport of these swiftly through the maritime route to the rest of the world. So there is an effort here, a concerted effort here to attract investment in this regard. Next slide, please. So where is the main centers being established? At the moment, there are 6 projects in India. And this year, 2025, some of these are coming under fruition. 2027, we expect roughly about 100,000 wafers to be produced in India in a couple of years. We didn't see any disturbance regarding this so far in terms of the production cycle. So we should expect things to be rolling out. So the biggest collaboration is between Power Chip Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation with Tata Electronics. Tatas have been a household name also in the semiconductor industry. Increasingly, they have plants in Singapore and main centers located elsewhere as well. So Tatas have taken the initiative to collaborate with PSMC. And in Dholera, in Gujarat, there is an $11 billion investment that has been made for a fabrication facility. So 50,000 wafers to be produced in a month, and between 20,000 to 100,000 jobs to be created in future. PSMC is already training the personnel in Taiwan regarding the establishment of these factories. The second one is Foxconn with HCL recently announced a project in Uttar Pradesh, where one of the biggest airports is under construction. Many American aviation industries are shifting to Jewar, and which is the place for the construction of this Foxconn plant, semiconductor manufacturing facility. So there is a huge prospect here in terms of the investment and production. It is focusing mainly on power management, AI, automotive display drivers. Last week, Minister Vaishnav made a statement in this regard after a cabinet committee cleared the procedures for the implementation of this factory. In Sanand, there are 2 more plants coming up in Gujarat, one over 200 million, another which is basically a outsourced semiconductor assembly and test plant. So it is these 2 are coming up, and then there is another which is with $400 million investment. So these are producing legacy chips, meaning those which have, even though these are 20-odd nanometer, it is still useful for even weather forecasting or satellite-related capacities. Finally, there is one when Prime Minister Modi visited Washington, D.C. Early this year. There is the Micron, which is putting up a plant in Sanand in Gujarat. And by this year, we expect this to be operationalized. Micron is investing about $830 million, while India is investing $1.2 billion in this. Now, I wanted to tell you about the Micron. Micron employees were arrested in China with the implementation of the National Intelligence Law of 2017. And there are a lot of restrictions on the US companies in China market. So Micron is moving out, and this is the time when Prime Minister Modi visited Washington, and we got this deal. So we expect that to roll out the chips by this end of this year. Next slide, please. So what are the advantages of all of these? efforts and what are the problems that we are facing. Advantages are we are looking at the technologies which are of a decade old at the moment. So you have mostly printed circuit boards which are being manufactured. So this is no big deal, but for India, it's a big deal in terms of the ecosystem being developed. AI, green technologies, and joint venture companies and technology transfers. Key equipment suppliers and materials providers are all now expanding their presence in India for these projects. However, there are a number of problems. There are huge capital outlays. This is very, very capital intensive, technology intensive project. So we see private partners expressing concern on the financial risk, given the global fragile economic system in this post-financial crisis period. So this is where the state has chipped in and providing for the PLI scheme and other incentives. There is also the cost overruns. While the projects are on, there are still cost overruns. Generally, these happen in any manufacturing activity or in infrastructure projects. So we are bracing for this cost overruns so that the projects can be put in place sooner than later. The second problem is in the infrastructure. We do have electricity breakdowns, per capita availability of water, high purity water, robust internet connectivity. There are disruptions here that needs to be actually addressed first in terms of the infrastructure. Tata's, for instance, faced a lot of problems in Bangalore and in other places. So the current effort is how to provide for uninterrupted electricity, water, and broadband capacity. We also lack a well-developed ecosystem for key raw materials like silicon wafers, gases, high purity chemicals. Even though chemical industry in India contributes to nearly 4 to 5% of the GDP, and we are making efforts in the chemical industry, yet this is also a big issue that needs to be addressed, especially in terms of making advanced chip equipment. Third is attracting and retaining talent. Now, we saw many of them coming to Taiwan, but they are staying back in Taiwan. So retaining talent here is a big issue for India. So we are incentivizing, trying to incentivize the relocation process. And this is where one of the major efforts is. Tatas have actually institutionalized that kind of procedure. So there is the reskilling, relearning process going on. We also have a lot of bureaucratic hurdles, indecision and risk aversion in the bureaucracy. The government announced a single window, and with big companies, this is successful. But with SMEs, this is not very successful. You'll have to go to several 16 to 17 windows for clearances. That procedure has been simplified, yet we keep hearing about complaints that the decision making has not been very swift. So that needs to be fixed, and that is what the government is now looking at. As I was mentioning before, most of the production in India is legacy chips. That is, these are kind of, from current knowledge perspective, these are outdated. Yet this is still very important for India in terms of the ecosystem, building up the ecosystem, in terms of the graduation in technological levels. So that is also being looked at. A very slow economic system clustering process, which is very important if you want to bank on when you face problems in the semiconductor industry. There are so many interconnected areas that you need the clusters to back you up. And that is where India is still not very comfortable at the moment. And that is where the effort is also. You may have seen some deals have been cancelled with Vedanta, TSMC and Vedanta and other groups. So it basically means that we need to improvise further in this regard. Next slide, please. Yeah. So the collaboration in developing an ecosystem includes not just the semiconductor industry, but also telecom and others. Foxconn, for instance, has invested heavily in India. Basically, these are in mobile phone, electronic devices. There is the Acer company, Fangte and Bauchen. They are into SMEs, production of the leather manufacturing. We saw the Taiwanese investment in China in the earlier period, in the 1990s, 80s and 90s, was mainly in the SME sector, noodle making, leather manufacturing, and other, tires manufacturing for the automobiles, spare parts. So these were the main, and it looks like we are now replicating that kind of experience, because one of the strengths of Taiwan is in the SME sector, small and medium enterprises, and it's very robust. And so there is the effort here to replicate that kind of an experience. We just saw Wistron Corporation building nearby, and it has invested $200 million in the manufacturing of telecom products. And the efforts are going on also by TIMA, the Taiwan Electric and Electronic Manufacturing Association, in the smartphone sector, and building clusters in Noida. Noida also, next to the capital city of India, also has Samsung company, which is manufacturing its mobile phones. Most of the major companies have now been shifted to this, which is where the Zevar airport is also being constructed as an aviation hub. So this is Uttar Pradesh also boasts of a defense industrial corridor, the second industrial corridor in India, which is after the Chennai, Tamil Nadu industrial corridor that was established. We are also looking for other industrial infrastructure projects across India, but these have actually led to a lot of exports. A couple of years ago, Indian exports touched nearly the total trade touched about $1 trillion. Out of a total GDP of $4 trillion, $1.1 trillion has been the exports and imports. This year, we expect the exports alone to touch around $450 billion from these industrial corridors. So it's very important for India to, even in the adverse situation of tariffs and trade restrictions, we are exporting. So this is a bright spot, and the signals are very clear for the other companies, including from Taiwan. Joint venture companies, we had the labor migration and mobility agreement for over 100,000 workers from India to Taiwan. There is the automotive industry, which is also catching up. The Indian automotive industry is increasing substantially. We produce something like 8 million units a year. And also increasingly in the EV sector, which demands a lot of semiconductors as well. Generally, automobile industry, the demand for semiconductor industry is very high. Chips production is very high because this is now highly getting integrated, and hence the demand for this is increasing. So automotive industry is showing big signs of recovery after the pandemic. EV components are also increasing extensively, and Taiwan today is helping India in the battery production, the advanced battery technologies. High quality auto parts, electronics, accessories are the other. Then there is the advanced chip design initiatives for the automotive sector that is also being planned. The next slide, please. This is my final slide. Basically, wrapping up on what we discussed just now on the chip diplomacy and Taiwan and India cooperation in the changing techno-geopolitical order. So we see that both realize that this is mutually beneficial. Taiwan and India realize that the Indian market is big. There is a huge potential for collaboration. Already some projects have already been initiated, as I just mentioned. The PSMC, Wistron, Foxconn, and others have moved into the Indian market in a big way. And so this provides for the mutual complementarities as well as a beneficial outcome. India's scale and market is very attractive to Taiwan. 1.4 billion people and 400 million consumers. So there is an uninterrupted supply that is possible. India's domestic consumption is 63%. American domestic consumption is 69%. China's domestic consumption is 53%. That is, we produce 100 items. India consumes 63 items. Very heavy demand for imports. Of course, the Trump administration had put these restrictions, tariffs, and reduction in terms of the imports into the United States. Yet, there are alternative markets where domestic consumption is pretty high. So this is a very structural advantage for a country which is trying to export to India. We consume 63% of what is produced or what is circulated in the Indian economy. So that's a huge advantage in sustaining growth rates, in sustaining consumption, in sustaining imports. It's a structural factor which is very attractive in terms of the Indian economy. So we consume a lot of automobiles, we consume textiles, we consume now chips. So this is a huge demand that is waiting to be explored further. We are also trying to upgrade our technological power, and hence there is demand for more semiconductor related industries. Collaboration between Taiwan and India in the chip diplomacy is also strengthening the strategic ties between the two sides. We have upgraded our relations in many areas. we are now discussing issues related to not just the commercial, like investments, technologies, and various other subjects are coming up for discussion. So there is a potential for the strengthening of strategic ties between the two sides. We have a lot of problems. We have to be realistic. We have a lot of problems. India is still underdeveloped in terms of the semiconductor ecosystem. And this is a major drawback that needs to be fixed. We have a lot of bureaucratic delays, cost overruns, yet both are determined to explore further collaboration in the semiconductors. So let me stop and thank you all for your attention.
Thank you so much. Let's have a 10 minutes break, okay? And then we will have discussion from the floor, both here in Taiwan and also online from Calcutta. And the session today will go on 1 more hour. So we have plenty of time, okay, for discussions, response, and then a Q&A session. Okay, so let's have a 10 minutes break. Thank you.
Dorma did not tell you how long our classes are. So we gave a free hand and we went on.
No, this is such a rich topic. So and also a lot of things we can discuss. Yeah, not only the advantages but also the problems. So take a break. Yeah. Technology. They described it as a huge motor, huge engine that's speeding up and taking us, the whole generation, over towards somewhere we don't know yet. Yeah. So actually, we see this state-to-state negotiation and state-led and company involved and transnationally, not only local, domestic. It's a huge dynamic web involving everything. Of course, we also know that, as you said, there's skilled labor, the problem they are facing, and also not only the chip, but also the AI induced platform monopoly, platform labor, and chip and everything. So I think we also need to, of course, observe this chip diplomacy and also all these advantages and strategies that's being induced and in a very rapid space. We also could foresee possible threat to the society or to the environment and to national security and everything. We mentioned just now populist activities or surveillance or more intensified population control and maybe even also poverty gap. And also the technology used to intensify local class conflict and so on, or ethnic conflict and so on. But those are a part of our project because we are also doing social and cultural research. We want to really engage with this changing moment, okay? But we are very happy that we have discussion, as I said, both from Taiwan local and also from Calcutta. We will invite Professor Roger Liu Qifeng, okay? He actually is an expert, okay, in this field. He is currently a first assistant professor from National Sun Yat-sen University, Graduate Institute of Asia Pacific Affairs. His area of research is on Indian politics and foreign policy, Sino-Indian relations, armed conflict and political violence, political geography, connectivity in international relations, and technology, international relations, and so on. So all those are involved, especially when semiconductor is rapidly changing not only the geopolitical landscape, but also a lot of AI aid technology. And we will also have colleagues from Calcutta, from the Center for Studies in Social Sciences. I thank Professor Rosinka to help us to organize the team. The team includes professors Vivekananda, professor in economic and finance, and Professor Pranab Das, and professor in also in the center, of studies and social sciences, and also Professor Madhu. He is also from the center, but also specializing in political science. And of course, after our discussion, I welcome our colleague from Calcutta to open up your camera so that we can see people. Well, we are also have our audience here, so and also audience online, so we can see everyone face to face. Okay, so Roger, you want to start?
Okay. Thank you, Professor Liu. So can I, please show my slides. I'll briefly talk about, discuss with Dr. Shrikant here. And first, I would like to thank Dr. Liu and Dr. Pan for inviting me to join this very meaningful and timely discussion regarding the overlap of different disciplines. And secondly, I'm happy to see Professor Shrikant here and listen to his insightful sharings. So, well,
the online space for that.
okay, I hope.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So, I've been working in India for 8 years, and last year when I came back to Taiwan, I worked at the National Science and Technology Council funded a project called DSET, Research Institute for Democracy, Society and Emerging Technology. So we are trying to study the overlap part of the geopolitics and emerging technologies. So, so this meeting today, I think is a good opportunity for me to apply what I have acquired for the past few years altogether regarding Taiwan and India and regarding the collaboration of Taiwan and India in semiconductor field in the context of geopolitics. So I will be very briefly talk about what I have learned about the on the ground some issues or some potentials or something that we have to pay attention to regarding the two countries when they work on semiconductors all together. First, well, this is very timely that we can now talk about the collaboration in semiconductors of the two countries. And because, well, the timing is great. Now we can see that, like Professor Shrikant has brought up, US has been, especially, other countries like the US, Japan, European Union now has been viewing India as great opportunities outside of China because of the geopolitical tensions rising up. So, so for these slides, I would like to show some kind of favorable environmental change in international politics regarding, especially in geopolitics regarding the importance of India being mentioned. So in the year of 2023, actually, US and India has signed when Narendra Modi, the Indian Prime Minister, visited Washington, D.C., he actually announced two statements with Joe Biden, the president, at that time regarding the comprehensive collaboration between India and the US in different types of emerging technology. And that actually has its geopolitical meanings, both for India and the United States. And we can also see that Japan and European Union has been chosen as the final destination. Some destinations of TSMC to relocate their capacities of manufacturing outside. Like in Japan, they are going to build, well, already there is a Fab 23 over there, producing for big companies like Toyota and Sony regarding this. And in EU, well, in Germany, in Dresden, Germany, they have established ESMC, the European Semiconductor Cooperation, and Bosch, NXP, and Infineon actually as the customer and the collaborator of TSMC. At the same time, they are collaborating all together. So these three places actually has been taking different corporate governance or the investment in different countries for TSMC. So what can Taiwanese company do in India actually is a very interesting thing. As you can see here on this table, you will see that TSMC has been working with Tata Group, trying to build, well, actually they work on different things. The first is a 28 nanometer scale fab in Gujarat. And there are some OSAT factories being established as well in different provinces, including Gujarat and Assam. So this is a good start, and this actually shows a different business model for TSMC and Tata because they are using what is called a transfer of technology transfer rather than it's not actually a JV kind of style because TSMC do not want to bear the responsibility of the possible disruption of production for the future. So for Tata actually and the government of India is, well, you will have to take your own risk regarding that. And everything is expected to happen in the year of 2027. So still we have some years, and this is actually where the risk is. So please go to another one. Yeah. And for this, I would like to put everything all together in one slide. And of course, when we talk about the potential of collaboration, there are many things can happen on the ground. However, we will have to evaluate the probabilities and likelihoods for which we should focus upon. Well, India has been good at IC design, and this has been reflected in different countries as well. So this actually is states as a very highly potential areas that India and Taiwan can work together. Because if you are talking about collaboration in business, well, you have to persuade these big tech firms to cooperate. Otherwise, it's not easy. And TSMC, for your trivial knowledge, TSMC has set up an office in Bangalore in the year of 2007. However, nothing happens ever since. So that actually reflects the uncertainty evaluation of the Taiwanese side towards the Indian side. Although people are talking about potential, but this is something that we cannot ignore. So IC design is a good thing, yeah. And actually on the ground, many things are happening. As I know, for E3, they have invited some of the startup team to Tainan, to the some campus of the southern Taiwan industrial park to tape out their ideas for staying on the campus for like 3 months, where they can reach out to their collaborators in the manufacturing or fabrications to realize their project. Yeah, so that's actually happening. However, for the fifth column, I listed the possible negatives of they may happen or take place during the collaboration. Well, the conflict may be medium because when India and Taiwan are on the same track, actually there might be some competitions between, people are fighting for the talents who in the IC design industry. This is something that might be happening in the future. And the top IC designers will prefer to go to the United States, Germany, and even Japan compared with Taiwan. Yeah, so we have on the Taiwanese side to improve our environment and to simplify the immigration process for this foreign talents to stay in Taiwan much easier. And the second one for advanced node fabs, well, to be honest, now for India, this is something that is yet to happen, right? Because we are just talking about the 28 nanometer scale, and that is a very, what we call the legacy chips. And well, this is a Red Sea market, which means that the Chinese has been all over the place. So India, of course, can be, the made in India product for the future can be protected by the government of India. Other than that, if you want to sell overseas, you are competing directly with the made in China chips, and that is very hard, even for the Taiwanese. Yeah, they cause pressures, right? And the third one is mature node. Actually, that's the synergy potential is high. This is what is happening for now, but later, if the Indian side has been doing that really well, it will become the potential competitors of the Taiwanese, along with China as well, right? And the fourth one is the ATMP or the OSAT. ATMP is what happens within the IDM, and OSAT is the outsourced one, all right? So that's the minor difference. India has been working on that, so I think this is a part that the two sides can work together. However, well, there are competitors as well in Southeast Asian countries like Malaysia, like Vietnam, like other Philippines. So this is something that we have to look at. And talent development is also a potential area. However, as I interview some of the veterans in the semiconductor manufacturing in Taiwan, including some very famous names. And they are very straightforward with me. They say, well, we prefer to have, talents cultivated in Taiwan. And then the Korean, the Japanese, the Vietnamese are what we thought that have greater potentials to work together. And for other countries, there are suspicions and there are uncertainties. So to be straightforward is like that. So we will have to overcome this part. And another potential area is supply chain integration that India and Taiwan can actually work, more closely in the integration of supply chain by putting different elements all together in the whole ecological system or the network. And finally, joint R&D is minimum because the level of the technology actually don't match for now. All right, so Taiwan is over here, India is over here. India has to start from scratch, and that actually requires a lot of, constructions or input from the government and the business. So the potential is here, but the uncertainty is also here. So when we're talking about the potential, which is good, but I think we should still be cautious and work on, the seeable improvement and progress on the ground step by step. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Madhu from Calcutta, would you like to join us now?
Yes, sure. So thank you very much. We don't have enough things to discuss because Professor Srikant Kondapalli has already very elaborately and comprehensively made the case. I just want to posit a few questions to Professor Kondapalli, and basically 3 to 4 questions. So the first one is, which was not very much discussed in the presentation, and which is interesting from our point of view, particularly in response to the project that we are looking in response to the China's China's entire geopolitical kind of perspective. So one is that in the recent times, both Pakistan and the current regime in Bangladesh, they are getting more closer to China, which is in a way a kind of a kind of concern for us, and particularly in the context of military escalations or in the context of defense, how that is going to impact us in terms of the doing business with someone like Taiwan or globally, because during these kind of escalations, one is the digital security aspect must be looked upon, and the second is that whether the flows of the global supply chains and the free trade during times of military escalations, whether how that is being taken care of. That's number one. The second one is that in terms of the chip industry, which is getting the investment that's Professor Kondapalli has basically projected in his presentation, that there is some kind of a geographical focus, which is largely in northern India and western India. Of course, in south. Sorry, am I inaudible or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry, we
So-
just had the technical fire alarm,
Yeah.
but it's over now, right?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry for interruption, go ahead.
Were I audible for my first question also?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
it is fine.
Yeah. Okay, so the second is like regarding the investments in terms of the geographies of location in India. Largely, the investments are in the western part of India, which is Gujarat and Sanand, and a little bit of coming up in Noida and in and around the new airport of Uttar Pradesh. Although in south, particularly in Chennai and in parts of Bangalore, I guess the chip industry is already well built. But what is actually very much less emphasis is given is that the entire eastern part of India, with particularly Bengal and Orissa, and this is a place where the semiconductor chip investments are coming less in terms. Although in the last year in September, there was an announcement that the global foundries are going to set up a plant in Kolkata. That was when Prime Minister Modi went to visit the US and met the President Biden. But after that, from October onwards, from last year, and once Trump has come up, and in the last meeting with Prime Minister Modi and Trump, it seems that that kind of investment in Kolkata is not taking up, at least there's no much such kind of animated discussions, which initially we had in last year, September. Remember, both Kolkata and in Odisha, you have Paradip port. So strategically, the eastern part is quite, in a way, quite good for the global trade. So ports are there. So these are the first two set of questions I have in mind for now. If Professor Shrikant Kondapalli can respond to these. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor Masood. Professor Pranad, would you like to join?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. This is a very nice presentation, and the part Professor Vivekananda Mukherjee and myself, we are working on about the more on the supply chain, things like that, and particularly the firm level things. Okay, so that way it was very useful for us. And I had just one or two simple questions. One is, well, India-Taiwan part is okay, I understand. That is a lot of initiative is going on, and probably this will work. But another part that Professor Kondapalli touched upon, which is the US-India initiative. Okay, in the present, the context of, because some of these major firms are US firms, and given the present policy of the US administration, how far this part is going to be tenable? India, Taiwan part, well, this is in the pipeline, and many of these things are still at the level of initiative. Not much. Some of these have come up, but not much. So this is one thing. Secondly, one very important input for this industry, so far I know, is good quality of water. That Professor Kondapalli also mentioned. And in this respect, Western India is not a very good choice in terms of that. And that way, this eastern part, apart from what Professor Moidul Islam commented, that this has close to eastern port part, and which is closer to Taiwan that way. This is one thing. Secondly, so far I know, in respect of the other thing where India has some advantage, which is the architecture part. Traditionally, Bengaluru and also Hyderabad, more Bengaluru and also Hyderabad, they are doing a lot of, have been doing a lot of good quality work on architecture. That India cannot use that. It just sells off. So that part if he touches upon. So that's it, not much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I believe Professor Vivekananda is not here, right?
Yeah, he said.
All right. Okay.
Just emailed me.
All right, no problem. So perhaps we can respond to these issues of the first round, and then we open up, okay, for further questions. Yes, please. Maybe we'll respond.
Thank you very much, Professor Liu, Professor Moidul Islam, and Pranav Das. One, the geopolitical factor on in terms of Pakistan and Bangladesh, how digitalization, free trade can be conducted during military escalation. Now, we saw during the recent India-Pakistan conflict, May 9th to 10th, May 7th to 10th, it didn't really affect the semiconductor industry or software sector. In fact, the Mumbai Stock Exchange increased its market capitalization by $195 billion. There is a substantial increase in the stock market, not because of the conflict, but because of the robustness of the Indian economy. So we can say that there is a marginal impact in terms of the military escalation on the semiconductor industry or allied industries, the economy, and so on and so forth. The stock exchange have signaled that this is very marginal, this is of no major consequence, the conflict. Now, if you're mentioning about the conflict escalating with China or in the eastern portion, that is Arunachal Pradesh and others, this cannot be predicted because that would be an all-round and intensive and the destructive capacity, it would be higher than compared with what happened in May 7th to 10th. So it is not predictable on that scale. In any case, if you look at Galwan, just one night of fisticuffs between the two, and then you have 20 Indian soldiers killed and 4 Chinese. They mentioned 4. After 8 months, they calculated the losses as 4 soldiers. While TASS News Agency mentioned 45 Chinese were killed in Galwan, and CIA estimated some 120 people killed on the Chinese side. So even Galwan was very limited in nature. Only June 15th night, these skirmishes have happened. We have not seen that spilling over into extensive time period. And India-Pakistan just 65 hours. So it was limited conflict. Of course, it doesn't mean future conflict will be limited. Future conflict can go on like Russia-Ukraine conflict for 3 years, or Gaza more than 2.5 years. So we cannot predict the conflict, but what is important is that the semiconductor industry is relatively unaffected. Well, it is no guarantee in future that will not be affected, but we can take this as. So one of the parameters is that the semiconductor industry currently is far away from the borders, northern borders. So China will have very less impact on this. But you rightly mentioned the western borders, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Rajasthan, where the DMIC is coming, the high-speed railway is coming. So, but we did not see any escalation. We did see some 1,200 drones being used, and these were across the border. The firings were across the border. We have not had much civilian casualties, even though there was some mobilization and some. So as far as the India-Pakistan conflict related is concerned, where it was very limited in nature. It did not result in high casualties or very high impact on economy, especially on semiconductor industry, almost nil. In fact, it triggered demand, which means the production capacity has increased, or signals for production capacity has been increased. For example, Defense Minister Rajnath Singh, on the day of ceasefire, he opened another BrahMos factory, the BrahMos missile factory in Uttar Pradesh. So, which means it has huge components of semiconductors, chips, etc. So, which India is meeting through its domestic indigenous production so far. So we can say that the Western theater is kind of disturbed because of the current India-Pakistan conflict. Yet it triggered production, or potentially triggered production. So I see that an opportunity rather than a problem area. On the other hand, Odisha, there has been some plans for expansion of the industry, especially Korean Kia company had established factories, automobile factories, which has huge demand for semiconductors. We, I think, had a trade of nearly $3 billion in Kia Motors. Huge jump, and the Orissa-Andhra borders had those shipping and other things. So we can say that there is demand that would be useful for the Eastern India as well. But these are basically national strategies. They look at the national security issues and trigger the investments in areas where it is possible. The second question on, I think I combined both of these. the India Park, and then the Noida, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Chennai, and so the question by Dr. Das is on the US-India initiative. Now, after the May 11th Geneva meeting between Hurley Fung and US Treasury Secretary Bassan, there is a speculation that the Trump administration came under the Chinese influence on the tariffs. And both sides reduced the tariffs to 10%. Previously, 145%, 125%, all this been removed and 10% has been put up. And they also announced a 90-day reprieve. But most important is the consultative mechanism that they established. We don't have the details about the Geneva meeting. They did not give any details in the public domain. But what is important is that Trump administration's terminology changed substantially. President Trump's visit to Middle East and other statements, they indicated some kind of a rapprochement between China and the United States. We don't have details for this, but we can speculate that US-China relations are getting kind of normalized with the tariff announcements, reduction in tariffs, and other indicators. But only if China invests heavily in the US market, such a normalization can happen. If you remember in 2019 January, the Chinese promised $250 billion investment in the United States, but they never kept that promise. And President Trump went to the Imperial Palace, the Kukum, and he said Xi Jinping is a father figure for Trump. And he also said, a lot of things like this. He said the Chinese would keep the promise of investments and so on. So nothing really happened because Trump was distracted with the elections, the Senate, House of Representatives. Now, in about 16 months from now, Trump will be busy with with Senate elections, House of Representative elections. You already know that the inflation in the US is rising because of these tariffs. And secondly, his ratings are down compared to when he was elected. So it's a new situation, which means the Chinese will wear out Trump till the elections. And then they say, you can do whatever you want to on the tariffs. So it's a game China may be trying to play. So I'm not sure if the US-India kind of thing would work out because of the US-China normalization at the moment. We don't have details, so we cannot for sure say what could happen in the future. But this is my speculation there are so many problems in that assessment, but I could only see like this. Then there is a question on the good quality of water and Bangalore and Hyderabad not very suitable as Eastern India is concerned. I agree. But these are generally strategic investments. Semiconductor investments are strategic investments. These are the states carefully calculate what the long-term message is, narrative is. And since Prime Minister Modi is from Gujarat, there is already a overemphasis on Gujarat. And most important, they were able to control the labor unrest. You remember in Bangalore, there was some ruckus in the Foxconn factory. And some students, volunteers and activists, they ransacked some portions. So one of the things is labor. How do you control labor protests and other things? Remember in Changzhou factory, there was huge labor unrest that contributed for Foxconn shifting from Henan to.
Right.
So labor is one factor here that both are sensitive about. Yeah, some things.
Thank you. So now we open up for other questions from the floor here and also from online. If you wish to raise a question, raise your hand. Someone? Yeah. Maybe we'll pass it around. Okay, if you have any.
My questions is,
Introduce yourself first because people online may not know you.
hi everyone, my name is Dorma and I'm a postdoctoral researcher with the Department of Humanities and Social Science, Taiwan University. So my questions is more related to maybe digital nationalism or techno-nationalism also really. The question is US has, I think, Taiwan TMSC has announced about 1 billion investments in US, I think during maybe election times or recently, and it was, there has been discussions that it was because of the pressure from the US government or maybe from the Taiwan government, although government denied that. That is one thing. And another thing is recently the Trump made a statement that the Apple should stop investing in India and should focus on US, doing the manufacturing in US. So my question is like in this case, how do Taiwan and India maintain a relationship which is some sort of maintain a balanced relationship that is especially keeping in mind the factor of the United States. Driven by the United States techno-nationalism interest. So this is my question.
Professor Pine, do you have any questions? No? Okay. So now you can raise questions too. Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Monica too.
Thank you to both of you for providing a comprehensive outlook on India-Taiwan ties. But speaking of chip diplomacy, what comes to my mind is the latest deal that has been unfolded between USA and Saudi Arabia and UAE. Both countries have come into agreement of spending around $600 billion, which is a huge deal, and the investments in data centers and transfer of advanced computing chips to these countries. So this first question is to Shrikant sir. Sir, how do you see are the long-term implications of these deepening ties between the Middle East and US on China? How is China expected to approach the situation, and will the tech competition between the US and China, will it impact such kind of deals? My second question is to Roger, sir. You said that, yes, when it comes to diversification or investments, Taiwan would prefer Southeast Asian countries, for example, South Korea or Japan over India. One of the factors I would say maybe work culture, which is more similar in these countries. But yes, it has also invested in USA in recent years. Example, Phoenix factory. One factor she mentioned, pressure. How do you think this diversification in other countries, especially the US, do you think TSMC risks its source code or extreme or this exclusive technology that only TSMC has had so far? Do you think in national security perspective, does it affect Taiwan's Silicon Shield? How do you see the situation? Thank you.
Maybe now you can take one or two more. 眼睛把 camera 对着这个 speaker，好不好？让
Hello everyone, thank you so much. My name is Poonam Sharma, and I think in the online audience already know me. Yeah, so okay, so as I think my question is mostly covered by Dolma and Megha, but still I would like to have a little bit of what I thought came to my mind. As we have briefly seen the growth India-Taiwan relations, it's very brief, and how the prospects of the semiconductor growth and the future. But as Professor Roger also mentioned, the uncertainties that we have been experiencing with every project. I mean, we have seen the projects go on, but then because of some reason, they get shelved. So also the question that Dolma had, how India Taiwan maintain the relation, keeping in mind the question of U.S. So has it become necessary for India and Taiwan now to overcome these uncertainties and really work on the semiconductor more than only the semiconductor, more than the business dealings, or it is more of a diplomacy that has become more necessary now, looking at the geopolitical question. So, it has overcome that, phase, and it has become necessary to, look at these uncertainties. What are your opinions on this?
Monica, online, do you have any question you want to raise?
Hello, Professor. Good morning. Probably I can go on the third round.
Otherwise, people don't know where you are.
So hello everyone, good morning. I'm Monica Verma from India, and currently I'm a MSCA, Marie Curie postdoctoral researcher in Pulaski University, Czech Republic. And right now I'm on a business trip in Italy, so actually the schedules are a little bit packed, but I can go on in the third round, I guess. So yeah, I just need a few minutes. Thank you so much. Hello.
2 minutes for putting it together.
All right. So you want, so you prefer to.
We can ask her if she wants to.
You can go ahead, Monica. This is our
Okay.
final round, I guess. Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
How are you?
Okay, sorry. So thank you so much for the presentation. I just wanted to ask one question, that as we are talking about chip diplomacy, India-Taiwan relations, and the possibilities that we are going to have in India, and that's what we are discussing about here. Particularly, I'm working on the vulnerable people like refugees and migrants and all, and specifically Rohingya refugees. And that project that we are doing, that we are focusing basically that how this kind of technology is gonna affect these marginalized people in India. So I just wanted to know on upper level, like what kind of laws and policies are being considered to particularly see these marginalized people in the society, how it's going to affect this. And on the lower level, what kind of like initiatives so far has been considered, because if we are looking for these future possibilities and everything, I just wanted to know that is this kind of stuff is being considered or being institutionalized in the program. Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Was I audible? Because I think the connection is not that
No, you need to turn
stable.
on your camera. It's clear, but your comments questions are clear. Okay. I was saying you could also turn on your camera, but no problem. But before you address this, I would like to add just one more. Okay, so you can close up your. That is as I said in the beginning, when we say the chip war or chip diplomacy, it's on the surface. Underneath, there are a lot. Okay, the more semiconductor industry is developed, the more AI, facial recognition, 5G dominance, and surveillance is prevailing. India is already very strong on this digital ID card, okay, the card, and it is enabled with AI facial recognition. As Monica mentioned, this refugees, Rohingya refugee or Tibetan refugee or other status people, I don't know what outcome they are there, but they could be more easily spotted, right? So so we are not just talking about chips. We are talking about how this technology has been induced or developed into a far more intensified governance or population control. So nowadays, we also have been discussing how we can foresee and prevent these violations of human rights. Of course, we could foresee the environmental pollution or labor exploitation, right? And we set up laws to prevent. But can we are there also groups or people working on this preventive, not of the crime, but preventive measures to see whether human rights can be protected, or there's like Facebook or those are already penetrated by outside forces. But are there because again, India is very strong, right? The CCTV already is all over, but also digital technologies are also very advanced. Are there people working on this aspect? And that's just my question.
Thank you all for those queries. TSMC in Arizona, they have made a commitment of $165 billion. And of course, President Trump is asking everybody to invest in the US. So everybody is under pressure to. Saudi Arabia promised some $600 billion, Japan $1 trillion, UAE and Qatar had an aeroplane being gifted to Trump. We also saw the demands on Europe, Mexico, Canada. So that is because of the MAGA, Making America Great Again, that campaign. So President Trump wants investment coming from abroad, because his grouse was everybody was trading with the United States with surplus, and they lost a lot of money in terms of trade imbalance. So that is the reasoning for the demands for investments in US market. But in the case of TSMC and Taiwan, there is some 4 years ago in parameters, there was an article on scorched earth policy. That is, in the case of invasion of China on Taiwan, that Taiwan should bomb TSMC. There was a crazy idea that was promoted in 2021 also.
Yes.
And McKinney and some other scholar, I don't remember, two scholars have mentioned this. So some thought that this is a American military response to the Chinese. This is obviously a defeatist, proposal. Instead of opposing China, they want to kind of have a scorched earth policy. I don't think that is mainstream idea in the US. I don't think that will be possible. But the pressure on Taiwan is very high from the United States to invest, to share the. So this Arizona plant is a big plant, some 6-7 projects included in this project. So it's a very big one. And so that is the pressure that United States. Actually, Taiwan and US have very less trade imbalance. So it is quite surprising that the demands were pretty high on Taiwan from the US. It's very marginal surplus, trade surplus, not very high surplus. I mean, China has $300 billion, $298 billion of surplus on the US. And they didn't invest anything in the American market. Mexico, Canada also have very high trade deficits in their favor against China, against the US. But they also did not invest in the American market. So, but in case of Mexico and Canada, it was about fentanyl and with immigration. Those are the main issues rather than trade surpluses issue. Anyway, so the Taiwan is under pressure to invest because of the overall situation. We do not know if United States will stop at that level or increase more demands in future. So this is the problem for Taiwan to address. If President Trump increases the demands, then it is very hard because Taiwan's economy overall is small compared to $19 trillion Chinese GDP or American nearly $30 trillion GDP. So if the demands on Taiwan are high, then it is really not possible for the government to only cater for the United States. Of course, the US is one of the security guarantors of Taiwan. So there is that element here, but nevertheless, we should consider the capacity of Taiwan is not that high in terms of going abroad in the US, in the other markets. So that's one response I have on the Arizona. Tim Cook was advised by President Trump to stop investing in India. And instead, what he said was, Apple should invest in the US, not invest in other markets, but invest in the US. That's again part of the MAGA, the Making America Great Again. Nevertheless, the real problem with the US is the per capita income is very high, which means the labor cost is very high. Industry goes where there is cheaper labor. So Tim Cook was saying that I can't pay $80,000 for the laborers, right? Workers. 80,000 is the per capita income, some 50 to 80,000. So it's pretty hard because these are technical personnel, high-tech skilled workers. So you need to pay more. And you can't pay more given the American per capita income as such very high. So, which means Apple company makes profits because of China, India, and other markets. Apple company cannot make profits if it wants to invest in the US and raise the production. It's not possible. So they're looking at markets where there is cheaper labor, relatively inexpensive labor. And so there is the issue. I don't think the Trump administration will restrict the Apple for a long time. Given Trump's policies, which are more tactical in nature rather than strategic, I would expect this only to be short term till he changes his opinion quickly, and so we probably will have a different position. So this is, I think it is temporary in nature. Yeah, this partly covers the US-Saudi Arabia thing, UAE, $600 billion investment. But on the substantial question of China-US tech competition, that is very troubling the global community. Because the Made in China 2025 will be completing this year. And they have identified 11 areas: shipbuilding, number one; digitalization, number one; high-tech manufacturing, number one. China wants to be number one. Sports, they want to be number one. Culture, they want to be number one. 11 subjects are there in the 14th five-year plan. And if you want to be number one, obviously you want to displace the United States in all these sectors. So this is a very troubling situation for whatever, because China's strategic objectives are not transparent. We don't know what China rejuvenation means, China dream means. But what we know is Taiwan invasion is part of that China dream, China rejuvenation. We know that they want to convert Arunachal Pradesh into Sangnan, southern Tibet, which is part of Tibet. So there is the irredentist claims. That is the troublesome aspect for countries in the neighborhood. If they want to become number one, it's fine. I mean, anyone can dream of becoming number one, right? It's legitimate. But you want to be number one, but trample on others. So that's a problem for everybody in terms of geopolitics. So that's where the global hegemon would try to act on behalf of some country or the other. In this case, Taiwan Relations Act of 1979 comes into the picture. So this is the troubling factor for a lot of people on a lot of countries on US-China high-tech competition. And much of this technology is buy, borrow, beg, steal kind of modeling. The US Congress reports suggest to a lot of technology being taken away from the United States, Europe, Taiwan, and Singapore and other countries. So it is actually not a fair means of acquiring technologies. For example, China has a 1,000 grains project where they, like grains are all scattered around. So you pick up those grains, which means a lot of espionage is conducted through the 1,000 grains project. So that's not legitimate. That's not abiding by WTO rules and regulations on IPR. So it's an issue which also, so US-China tech competition is problematic and it also has a huge geopolitical impact, not just for China-US, but for the rest of the world as well. Even for Russia, there are so much of espionage cases in Russia by China. The hypersonic glide vehicle technology is borrowed from a St. Petersburg professor. And the Chinese got what they wanted from all of this. Likewise with other, IPRs. So this is the problem. If they want to be number one, that should not be a problem. Anyone can aspire to become number one, but the means were problematic. Given the uncertainties in India, Taiwan that you raised, what are the options for India and Taiwan in this geopolitical, the pressures that are building up? I think, as Professor Joyce Liu mentioned, one is the geopolitical things, but quietly there is semiconductor industry is progressing. Collaboration is progressing, cooperation is progressing. unless until there is a violation of interstate agreements or IPR related agreements. If these are not done, geopolitical issues are not really affecting these. It does affect, but marginally. So I was trying to say that there is scope for improvement. As long as the state-to-state guarantees are observed and no violation of these take place, the cooperation continues, regardless of broader geopolitical, developments. On the issue of Rohingyas, or generally marginalized people and human rights, the joke in India is if you have CCTVs all around, they don't function.
Really?
Many of them don't function. So you're in safe hands. No, nobody is violating anybody's human rights.
Established their semiconductor industry, and then they can improve that.
Yeah. No, we have a constitution. We have human liberties.
Okay.
The individual rights are protected. Any individual can go to the Supreme Court, and we have a balance of power, meaning balance of. So executive, judiciary, parliament, they are separated. And if you actually look at the Supreme Court rulings, these are mostly against the government of India, of that day, executive, on all issues. So much so, recently the President of India said, why should we listen to the Supreme Court on the issues related to, so there is actually active involvement of the courts, the rule of law, and it's very robust. So human rights issues are taken to the Supreme Court or to the regional courts, and there is very robust response. So and we have a free press, sometimes chaotic, but the most important is nobody can stop them. The free press, like in Taiwan, we have a vibrant free press, a vibrant civil society, and protection of the constitutional rights. So I don't think there is any major violation of human rights related issues.
I've heard some professors from the university could be dismissed because they wrote or published some sensitive issues. Would that not be against human rights?
One of my colleagues was dismissed, but that was not based on this. It was based on something else.
Or something else.
Sorry. So
I don't know that much.
Yeah. So it's not based on human rights or, yes, generally there is discipline that need to be followed. Normal discipline that a student, teacher, faculty member, faculty members and others that need to be followed. There are consequences if one is not following those disciplinary things.
The reason I raised with that specifically was the freedom of speech. The freedom of speech could very easily be hampered when more surveillance or more control of thought and speech are happening in China. So I don't want it to happen in India because such a peace-loving country. Anyway.
Yeah, I think comparison with China is not possible. We have substantial human rights guaranteed under the Constitution. Xi Jinping proposed internet sovereignty, meaning party-state control.
Yeah.
We don't have that. In fact, China and Russia proposed this in the BRICS, and Brazil, South Africa, India opposed, because all these three are democratic. And we didn't allow the internet sovereignty issue to be put up in the BRICS because there is no consensus. Three out of 5 opposed the proposal of Russia and China. So technically, structurally, we have been sticking to individual rights as protected in the Constitution. And we have means to address this. Well, not all democracies are perfect. Remember, President Bush was elected by the Texas Supreme Court, not by the people, right? So there are limitations, but the most important thing is our press is free and judiciary is not controlled by the government. It is independent of the judges are elected by the judges. The government doesn't elect the judges, unlike in the US.
Yeah, right. They appoint.
Trump has appointed so many judges. Indian Prime Minister, Indian President cannot nominate a judge. They have a collegium, they choose from among them based on merit or whatever consideration. But the most important thing is it is independent. Judiciary is independent in India. So we raise the issues in the courts. We go and sometimes it becomes a nuisance as well, because somebody wants to construct a high-speed railway, but I, as an individual farmer, can go to the court saying a road cannot be permitted because my ancestors have been living in this area for centuries. So I don't want to sell this road, this land for the road construction. So sometimes it also becomes a problem for infrastructure development and others. Yes, I agree that we are not perfect. Indian democracy is not perfect. We are trying to, mobilize 1.4 billion people. 830 million people vote. So it's moving the elephant is so difficult.
Yes. Thank you so much for such a. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, this is where I wrote many things down, but let's see whether I can finish that in a very short time. Well, when it comes to semiconductor, there are several myths that we have to debunk sometimes. Well, as trained as a political scientist by DBA to study semiconductor, I have to share with you that I found that, well, as a political scientist, we would like to focus more on the political factor. But if you're a manufacturer, actually, they don't care about this. So the problem is that there's a gap between, if you ask the people around there, they will tell you something else. All right, so, well, I like to play the devil's advocate. So if I be too straightforward, please forgive me. First, I think we cannot over politicize semiconductors because, well, geopolitics gives opportunities for Taiwan and India. However, well, the fundamentals matter much more than that, right? The fundamental includes technology, include the capacities, include the most important thing is the yield, all right? You have to make sure that 90% up of your products can work, right? That actually, the low yield explains the failure of Intel and Samsung vis-a-vis TSMC, all right? And that is something that India has to really pay attention to because India has no experience of producing the chips before, right? So this is something that we have to take a look. And if you remember, last year, well, after the 2023 October 7th attack from Hamas to Israel, well, Intel actually canceled the investments in Israel, right? Not because of the war, but because they fail in their company governance, all right, corporate governance. That's the key, all right? They cancel several projects investing in Israel, Poland, and other countries, all right? And actually, that was a blow to the U.S. diplomacy. That's not because of the war, but because of their company capacity. So that's the thing. And semiconductor also is a very education intensive technology. I mean, the sector, all right? That is much more than you can think, because very high level of the brains work as like the ordinary workmen in the, they just learn how to operate the machines, and that's it. Do you want to do that? Well, here, people in Taiwan, they feel so proud of working for companies like TSMC. But TSMC, when transplanted to Arizona, it's another foreign company. Nobody cares about that. And if you're interested, you can take a look at the embedded investigative journalistic piece by a person. It's called The Rest of the World. They actually wrote an article about this. Well, the cultural conflict between TSMC, the Taiwan people, and the US in engineer actually is very large, and they're engaged in different lawsuits and still going on. And I think that will happen in the future. So what about the conflict between the two? Well, actually, the TSMC, if you notice, when C.C. Wei says that they are going to invest $165 billion in the US, he doesn't indicate the schedule. It doesn't indicate the end date. So it can take forever, right? And after that, remember, there was a very interesting thing. There was a documentary called The American Factory. It describes a glass factory from China trying to invest in Obama's United States. It failed at last, all right, because of the workers, the unions, and everything, all right? So what will happen to the TSMC Arizona, we don't know, all right? If they apply all the robots, maybe it's fine, but if the American laborers are involved, that's another story, right? So that's it. And the second thing is regarding the silicon shield, right? Well, I would say that the silicon shield as first, is there a silicon shield? All right. Well, if you ask different people, they will tell you different things. But secondly, I would say that Donald Trump, and I would like to bring in the role of the US plays. Well, now as Taiwanese and India, we like to put US on this side, right? But actually, US plays as a village, or as a bridge between the two countries. Actually, the suppliers of Taiwan's electronic industries relocate to India because of their US supply chain goes there. All right, Apple actually is a big attraction for these people to go with them. Well, it's a little bit like the Chinese immigrants were coming with the British Empire to Kolkata, right? They don't go there because that's India. They go there because they thought it's part of the British Empire, right? Yeah. So the military thing is actually the key. That recently there's a report. They found that in major US weapon platforms, there are still a lot of made in China chips or semiconductor inside. For one example is in the Ford class aircraft carrier, they found that there are 6,500 plus made in China semiconductors inside. All right, why it is like that? Because when they contracted to the big weapon manufacturers like Northrop Grumman, GE, and others, they passed the security clearance. But when they subcontract, it goes to the Chinese companies. All right, so then finally, the Chinese actually still got the business. So the US now, they discovered this problem. So they have launched something called the Trusted Foundries since the year of 2003 under Wolfowitz, the DOD secretary during that time. However, you have to be setting up your factory physically in the US to be qualified. That's why they want to get back TSMC to go there, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is that Donald Trump and his advisors want to re-establish or rebuild the ecological system of fabrication of chips back in the US. Not only the big company you want to have like such that a lot of small and medium-sized enterprises. The US used to have 60,000 of them in the before 1990s, but now it's 30,000, 50% half. All right, so that caused a problem. When they try to outsource this to the US companies, there are no companies, so that's why they have to go to China. All right, so that's the problem. So that's why they wanted to be back. All right, so let's think about this way, if Taiwan can actually strengthen the US military military-grade semiconductors by relocating some of its capacity back into the US. Actually, that will be helping Taiwan, rather than otherwise.
Very good. Very good. I think it is perfect. I mean, there's a long afternoon. We covered a lot of issues.
Yeah.
Very informative, very stimulating, and also a lot of issues for us to continue to observe, maybe research, and also think further and write further. So thank you all for coming, and thank you especially for Professor. I need to come to yeah. Yeah, and 谢谢 and also 刘奇峰教授. Next time we should visit 高雄
Next week we should visit India. Not Kaohsiung, India.
Not only Kaohsiung.
Not only, yeah. Sure. I've been to New Delhi and also Calcutta before, but yeah, sure, I will visit again. Okay, thank you all. So now thank you Professor Madhu and Pranav. Thank you so much. Okay, yes. See you again and in our next meeting. Okay, bye bye. Bye bye.